In Tbilisi, they continue to receive humanitarian assistance. A plane with bandages has arrived from Moscow. There's a lot of crime in the Georgian University. There was a group of people who had automatic weapons and who robbed students, especially foreigners. There was a mass escape of 170 severe criminals who had formerly been guarded by the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Next to the Averia Hotel, there was a political meeting with thousands of people, and Jabe Ateliani and Chinturi, who had been released, spoke. There were many persons with machine guns who were protecting them, who were under the leadership of Mr. Medrioni. We have now information from Stepanakert on the 26th of December in the evening in the city of Shusha. There was a rocket attack on Stepanakert and the Armenian village Karentak in the Shushan area of Nagorno-Karabakh. Fortunately, there were no casualties. There is no electricity or natural gas in the area. It would appear that the situation is yet to become even more complicated. According to INFORM, we learned from Baku that the President of Azerbaijan, Rasim Musambekov, categorically rejects the possibility of, within the framework of the Commonwealth, of discussing the status of Nagorno-Karabakh. He made that statement when he was discussing the statement of the government of Armenia with regard to the situation which had developed in Nagorno-Karabakh. The women's committees of Tiraspol, Ribnica, and Kamenka and other areas of the Dniester region from the 27th to 30th December will have a march of protest from Tiraspol to Minsk. They are dating the march for the meeting which is to take place on the 30th of December in Minsk. As we all know, according to Interfax, the women want to use this march to attract attention to the 23 persons who have been arrested in Moldova with regard to the incidents which took place in the area of the city of Dubasari. Just recently, we could not even have imagined that military actions would be carrying away human lives on the territory of our country. Nevertheless, we today will remember the persons who on the 26th of December 1979 went to the Afghan war and did not return. So there was a memorial ceremony in the Yolokhovsky Cathedral. Let's have a moment of silence in their memory. The Supreme Soviet of Russia had two topics to discuss today, the budget and the social safety net for the poor. These are so difficult situations because of inflation and the declining production activities, which these two problems arise side by side. The draft of the budget shows the situation of the economic reform. This was a report made by the Vice Premier of the government, Igor Gaidar. He said there were only the basic thrust of the budget had been developed. There's Mr. Gaidar, who says that today he's the Vice Premier of the government of Russia. We only have the rough figures today because anyone who wanted to lay them out precisely would be unaware of the real situation for the coming quarter, or he would be engaged in disinformation of the parliament. I think that the Supreme Soviet, in spite of the difficult situation, has displayed a good deal of understanding of the realities of the situation, and it's important that we have support here. President Yeltsin was to receive by the 15th of January the budget for the coming quarter, and that's an exhaustive budget, believe that or not, and there will be an attempt to restrain inflation. This is Mr. Yarov, who is the Deputy Chairman of the Supreme Soviet. He said the budget is such that we now have to, by the 3rd of January, we have to examine this question and decide what has to be done and what we can accomplish with regard to the poorer members of our society. We consider it correct that all the councils examine their budgets so that there might be set-asides, not only from the budget, but likewise from organizations organizations and enterprises, and we might be able to use this money for this charitable purpose. We want to increase by 60% scholarships and pensions and various forms of compensation. While the government is looking, or the parliament is looking for money for the poor, the prices for food are changing with astronomical speed. After the 2nd, the prices will not be market level, but they will be inaccessible for pensioners. This woman has 2 bags, but she has there only that which she found in the garbage or the things that she was given. This is half-rotten vegetables and a bone given her by the butcher. But what do you do if need drives you to this? So that any decision of the Russian government with regard to social assistance is perhaps senseless. We have to turn to the enterprises, give them perhaps tax benefits if they engage in charitable activities. So there's nothing new here, as there is nowhere in the world. So true freedom and democracy can be achieved only in those societies where people are full and prosperous. So we have to feed people. The Vice President of Russia, Rudskoy, said that a market economy could be introduced only in a democracy. There were 5 government committees which were handed over to the Russian government. Nevertheless, at the press conference, Mr. Rudskoy was very straightforward in soldier style when he said he was not about to resign. The anxiety here with regard to the decision had to do with Mr. Rumyantsev, who stated that we might have a situation that where he would end up leading the opposition. The currency crisis today makes it appropriate for it to give us a little excursion back into history so that we might see how the system has functioned. Immediately after ration cards were cancelled, Stalin decided that we should determine the relation of the ruble to the dollar. To resolve the question, the experts had to determine how many goods could be purchased for a ruble and how much for a dollar, and then compare them. The political decision was very comprehensible to them, so they took caps that nobody in the United States wore, but everybody in our country were very cheap, so we could buy them 5 of them for a ruble, but for a dollar you might be in the United States, you could buy only perhaps the brim of such a cap. So they decided then to equate the dollar to 14 rubles, but in the morning, after the General Secretary looked at things, the new course of exchange was determined at $1 for 4 rubles. That is, they lost the figure 1 out of 14. And thus they determined the exchange rate of $1 for 40 kopecks, and that was the artificial exchange rate in the artificial system. So now what do we have for today? We have a record on the currency exchange. $1 is going for almost 172 kopecks, just a few kopecks short. The specialists are watching the situation and are saying this is very artificial. The less the organizations and individuals can buy currency, the higher the currency goes. So we have to remind people that the government continues to publish figures according to which the official rate of exchange is $1.55 kopecks, the commercial rate is $1.60, but the auctions is 172 rubles for the dollar. So the reason for this is that we're going to have a continued fall of the ruble. The Russian government is now discussing the question of selling land to foreign citizens, so that Russia literally might be bought for pennies, but these have to be convertible pennies. Fortunately, that's not yet taking place, but the currency crisis is everywhere. So what does Russia do? What to do? This is the traditional question for Russia. Mr. Soldat was the chairman of the Russian stock bank. We have to legally permit persons to legally purchase ruble for currency. We've had 4 auctions conducted by the stock bank of Russia. At the last auction, since the quantity of currency being offered, it reached $10 million or $12 million. The rate of exchange fell from 172 rubles for the dollar to 144 rubles. I consider that this is a demonstration of correct real policy at the auctions. So now we're going to have auctions and we're going to have a currency exchange if, of course, we don't have an artificial element introduced into the situation. The international media continue to comment the resignation of Mr. Gorbachev. Mr. Zbigniew Brzezinski said that Gorbachev was a great man, but that his historical triumph had turned into a personal tragedy for him. In France, people are certain that his political career is not yet completed. Le Monde considers that he could be compared to a figure from Shakespeare or Cervantes. He resigned with dignity. Mr. Gorbachev intends to greet the New Year in Moscow and then visit Stavropol, where he's from and where his mother lives. We had learned this by telephone from a member of TASS who was on his staff. Today, the President of Russia, Mr. Yeltsin, signed a decree which is important not only for us, but I hope for our also for our viewers. The Soviet radio and television entity is to be eliminated and replaced with the